Okay, so I'm going to go over in this video a couple of tips and tricks for Excel to get you through your case studies this semester. So I know you learned a lot in Management Science 290, but I find that a lot of students have forgotten or maybe it doesn't apply to larger data sets. So here I go. So the first trick that I'm going to show you is I want you to get used to not scrolling through your Excel workbooks through sheets. Because when we have really large data sets, that is not going to be a good option for you. This one's small enough that you could, but I want to go ahead and get you used to doing this trick right now. If I just click on the cell, the first hospital cell here on row 12 that says CC, and I hit Control-Shift for a Windows or Command and Shift together for a Mac, plus my down arrow, look what it does. It highlights that whole column and it finds the bottom of the column of data. It also tells me that I've highlighted 403 rows and 1 column. Over here, on the bottom right of my screen, it gives me a count of all the cells that I've highlighted. Now, if I hold down the Control-Shift for Windows, Command-Shift for Mac, and I hit the right arrow, it'll find the right side of the data. So this works for the up, down, left, and right arrows on your computer. Notice now that it told me it highlighted 403 rows and 3 columns, and the total count of the cells that I've highlighted is 1,209. So that's the first trick that I want to show you, and that will become imperative when you're working with larger data sets with your ANOVA project and some of the other data sets that we have this semester. All right, so I know you learned a lot of functions to check for things, count things, but I'm going to show you one function that'll work for almost every situation, okay? And it's the if-then function in Excel, and also the and or functions in Excel. All right, so let's say that I wanted to count just the number of things in the risk category that are high risk. So if I want to do that, I can start writing a function. And the way you start a function in Excel is to do the equal sign. And I'm going to use the if function. The if function, if you choose that and type your parenthesis, it tells you what arguments it needs. It needs what you want it to test for, what to do if it's true, and what to do if it's false. So if I write that I wanted to check that this cell equals, and it's a categorical variable, it's a word, so I have to put parentheses, quotes around it. I wanted to check that that cell says high for high risk. So if I want to count up all the high risks, I'm going to get it to check that one cell for high risk. And then if it's true for that cell, I want it to just print me a 1. And then another comma, I'm just going to tell it to give me nothing. Quote, quote will give me nothing. Or you could put a 0 in there if you wanted. You could do 0 or quote, quote. I don't like to clutter my columns, so I just leave mine empty a lot. All right, so then I close my parentheses. So I put my 3 arguments in my if function. What I wanted to check for, comma, what I wanted to do if that thing is true, comma, what I want it to print if that thing is false. And then I just hit enter. And notice that it checked for that cell. It did confirm that high was in that cell, and it gave me a 1 because of it. Now I want to apply this to all of the other cells in the risk category column. So what I do is I hover over the bottom right of this cell, and when you get the crosshairs, you see how my mouse is changing to the crosshair, then you double click. And what it does is it applies that function all the way down. So it's checking every cell in the data set in the risk column for that word risk. Now, how do I count these all up and see how many I have in the high risk category? Oh, and I should note that this function, when you get the crosshairs and double click so it'll apply it all the way down to the bottom of the column, that only works if you're in the column that's to the adjacent to your data set. That won't work if you type your function in over here. You'd have to hand drag it down if you put it over here. All right, so now I want to count up my 1s because that's how many words of risk I have in my data set in that column. So now I'm going to say equals sum, open my parentheses. I'm going to click in this cell. I'm going to hit Control, Shift, and down because I'm on a Windows. If you're on a Mac, you'd hit Command, Shift, and down. It's going to go all the way to the bottom of that column. Notice that my function is up here, so even though I can't see it right now, I can see what I'm finishing. So I'm going to end my parentheses and hit enter. And then I just need to scroll up to see the count. So there are 182 in the high risk category. All right, so that's one little way to count something without using any of the fancier functions in Excel. If then works for many, many situations. All right, so now let's talk about what to do if you need to count not only those that are high risk, but maybe those that are at the hospital system CC and high risk. How do we do that? Well, you can get it to check for two things in your if function. So I've already got my if function written here, but now I want it to check for this risk category being high and the hospital being CC. So what I do is I'm going to apply inside my if function the and function. So capital A-N-D, open my parentheses, and I'm going to get it to check for CC. So I just click in that cell, or for the hospital cell, which is B12, equaling, quote, CC, end quote, comma. And then I'm going to close my parentheses for the and function around that second thing I wanted to check for. So notice what I have in here. I have it checking that B12 is CC and C12 is high, and, because I have an and here, if I wanted it to do or, I'd just use the word or there. All right, so it's checking that B12 equals CC and C12 equals high, and then comma, what to do if both of those are true, comma, what to do if both of those are false. And I just hit enter. I'm going to get my crosshairs, apply it all the way down. I still have my sum function over here, so it already changed my number. So now I can see that there are 160 that are in the high risk category at hospital CC. All right, so that's how to apply the and. I could do three things inside of here, which you'll need to do in your case study. Whoops. So if I go back over here and I want to check for CC, high, and live, for instance, then what I do is double click, go inside my and function. I'd add another argument for it to check for. And this time I want to check that this cell equals live. Hit enter. Get the crosshairs, apply my function all the way down, sum up my ones, and I see that it's 128 that are at CC in high risk that lived. Okay, so hopefully that helps you. Now, I added a hint to question, I think it was 7. So if you've already opened the case study, make sure you go back in and look to see if you can find the hint for that. You should check the survival for the 4 different categories: low risk for CC, high risk for CC, low risk for CHC, and high risk for CHC. That'll help you get that answer. And then for question 8 on your case study, let me erase this. I'm going to hit Control-Shift down and right, and I'm just going to hit the delete. And now notice that it took out all those functions in there. Okay, for question 8, I want you to pay attention. Notice, if you read the documentation carefully, you're going to see that the average risk that is mentioned on the second sheet on the readmission, or the average readmission rate, excuse me, mentioned on the second sheet, notice that it is low plus high divided by 2. It also tells you that high is 1.5 times low, so you could rewrite this as low plus 1.5 times low instead of high divided by 2. And if you use that function and solve, you can get the low and the high out of the average that's reported for the readmission rates. Okay, so that's all I have for this one. Good luck on your case study. You've got 2 attempts on it.